Welcome back to our classroom. This is Mr. Mureri here. Now, to understand our environment or the surrounding, kids will need to master physical quantity. Now, the physical quantity here to measure like your height, to measure the length of the table, to measure how far the length of a football field, to measure how far one city is from another, or one village is from another, or to measure the height of a mountain and all these different measurements, or the length of a spoon, how long a spoon is. We will need length. Length is the fundamental physical quantity. Physical quantity just means these kinds of measurements that we can use to compare things in. We get a number and then we say this is how many centimeters, this is how many inches, this is how many kilometers, so that we can be able to compare if one thing is longer or shorter than another, right? So without these kinds of quantities, we cannot make sense of our environment. So hello kids, join me. Let's get started. Now, this is a centimeter rule. So to measure how long something is, I get a rule like this, and it says if we go from here to here, we'll call this 1 centimeter. And if we go from here and maybe right up to here, you see we start from 0 to 10, we'll call this 10 centimeter. Now, if we come here below, we go from here to here, we'll call this 1 inch. You see that an inch is longer than a centimeter. And then if we go from here, all the way here, that is exactly what 10 inches is. So 10 inches really, really long. So if you say, hey, my spoon is 10 centimeters or my spoon is 10 inches, then the 10 inches spoon is longer than the 10 centimeter one. But again, we can just stay with the centimeter rule, and I can say my spoon is 10 centimeter, and you will say your spoon is 15 centimeters. So I go right here, 15. So my spoon, because we're both in centimeter, 15 centimeter, of course, is longer than 10 centimeter. So now with these measurements, we will know exactly what it is, because if you leave the spoon there and you say, hey, that's a 10 centimeter spoon, I know if I take this rule and I place one end of it at 0 and the other end will get to 10 centimeter. Then that is exactly the same in Cameroon, in France, in China, in America. It will be the same unit. So again, a quantity that is the same anywhere in the universe. So we use that to make sense of the world. Okay, now we go to take some measurements. Friends, let's go. Come with me. And now, before I forget, what about these units inside, between? Now, between this 0 and 1, we can count. Here in the middle is half. So this is called half a centimeter. So if I measure something, like this, and I end here, that is half a centimeter. If I measure past 1 and I end here, that is 1.5 a centimeter. 1 and 1/2. And then if I measure here is 2 and 1/2 of a centimeter. So, and we'll write it like 2 and 1/2, like this. 2 and 1/2 of a centimeter. All right. Now, what about the smaller spaces? Say, oh, teacher, what about the smaller spaces? Now, each of these smaller space is, we have 10 little spaces between 0 and 1, and each of that space is a tenth, 1/10. So the meaning of this is we divide the space into 10, so each of these is 1/10, and then when we take all of it, we'll have 10 tenths, and then that will make just 1. So 10 tenths is 1. So if I measure something up to 3 and then a little bit, so that will be 3.1/10 of a centimeter. So 3.1/10 of a centimeter. And then I'll tell you something, it works so nicely that if we change to decimals, 3.1/10 of a centimeter is gonna be 3.1 centimeter, because this place after the decimal place is called the 10th place. So you can read it as 3.1 or 3.1/10, right? So centimeter. So again, meaning that if we only have the centimeter, we can only measure full length, full centimeters of things. We can measure this, And then if you have something that is above this, but not up to 3, you see, you don't have anything to say. What do you say? That this is 2 centimeter too? Or this is 3 centimeter? No, it's not up to 3, it's more than 2. So we need some final things, and we call this precision. We can be precise. And then to be precise, we have to employ the idea of fractions. What are the parts that are not up to 1? Those parts are called fractions. Another word for fraction means a part of a whole. Okay, so with fraction, the idea of fraction, we can either stay with the fraction, we say 2.5, or we can say 3 and a tenth. Or another way to say the fraction is by the decimal. We forget the 10, we just put 0.1 because that is a 1 there. If we have 3 and 2 tenths, right, then we'll forget the 10 at the bottom, we put a point. Because the point, the first place after the point, we just put the 2. So this 2 is read as 2 tenths. So these are 2 different ways of reading 3 and 2 tenths or 3.2. All right. Now, when we get to the inches 1, what do we see? Now, here are the inches. If I measure here, that is 1 inch. What is this measurement immediately after this? Now, let's see. Let's observe here. Now, the way they divide the things here is very different from the centimeter rule. Now, we go here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I have 8 little gaps here between 1 and 2, 8 little gaps, between 0 and 1, 8 little gaps. So it means each of the gap is 1/8. So if I measure up to here, I will say that is 1 and 1/8, 1 and 1/8. You say 1 and 1/8 of an inch. And the short form of writing an inch is IN, right? 1 and 1/8 of an inch. Okay? And what if I measure up to here? I measure a little further. Then a little further will be 2/8, and 2/8 is a quarter. Now, why is a quarter? Now, look at this longer one. Now, this longer one, I will count 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I just check this longer one, it divides this distance into 4 equal parts. So each of them is a quarter. So this is a quarter. This point is a quarter. So if I measure up to this point, it's 1 1/4, but it's also 2/8. You can say 1 and 2/8 or 1 1/4. And then if I measure exactly in the middle, is a half inch. So if I measure right up to here at the middle, it will be a ½ inch. Because look at this middle line, it divides here 1. We have the space here 1, and then another equal space here to the other. So into 2 equal parts. Each part is 1/2. So if I measure to this point, I will say 1 and 1/2. So that's the meaning of the sizes here. And you say, hey, teacher, what? But then again, what if something measures? What if something measures and it's not exactly there? It measures and is in between the 1/8 and 2/8, in between. So it measures to this point in between here. Then we can split again into 2 equal. We can split that space into finer parts. We can split again into finer parts. So we go here, and this 8 we split into 2. We split this other part again into 2. We split again into 2. And then when we do that, we'll have finer parts that can really help us to be very precise. All right. And if we do that, what we'll get in return will be 16 equal parts. So now I'll have 1/16, 2/16 with an S, 3/16. All right. So my measurement now will be better expressed as 1 inch, 1 full inch. And then now we have the fractional inch, which is 3/16. 3/16, like you said, 3 apples. So 3/16. Why a 16th is just this gap between this long one and the small one. So I have 3 of those gaps. So 3/16 of an inch. So I have 1 whole and 3/16. So that's the measurement. Okay. So again, the Americans, they don't use the decimal like 1.2 inches. They don't use that. They use fractional. So everything is just fractional on the 16th. But the centimeter, because we split it into 10 equal parts, so we can easily translate it to decimals. Because decimals, you have to take the whole from 0 to 1 and split it into 10 equal parts. And then if you have just at this first point, you say we don't have any hole, we just have 0.1 centimeters. So 0.1 centimeter is just the gap between this first zero here and the first gap. So that is a tenth. So another name for 0.1 centimeter is just a tenth of a centimeter. Yeah, we just do a tenth of a centimeter. Now another name of a tenth of a centimeter is called millimeter. Millimeter. So instead of saying that 0.1 centimeter, you can just say we have 1 millimeter, right? 1 millimeter. So that's the meaning of millimeter, is when you split the gap between 0 and 1 of a centimeter, you split that gap into 10 equal parts. A smaller part now is called a millimeter. And the millimeter helps to measure things that are not up to full centimeters, right? Okay, so there we go. That is our lesson for today. Introducing length as a quantity, as a physical quantity, and we can use it to measure things that are not too long around the house, like spoons and other things. Just to add a little bit, let's measure some things around the home, right? Let's see. So we go here, for example, here. What is the length of this fish? What do I have? I have an inch ruler. An inch ruler. So what do I go? Now, what's a good way to, like, you learn as a scientist or an engineer in the future, you have to learn a better way to measure things that are not really like straight, or the shape is not really a definite shape. Definite shape means like a rectangle that is definite, or a triangle we can measure. So here we take a line and we hold this line at the tail like this. We bring it up, and then we come at the edge also here. We hold this tip. We bring it up like this, straight up, straight up. Okay, so it means the length is between this line and this. Now we can pick up our ruler. We pick up our ruler and we put the zero of our ruler on this line. Good. The zero of our ruler, you see, the zero of your ruler must be exactly on this line. And now we can read the measurement. Now let's go. We have 4 full inches, 5 full. Whoa, 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches, 4 inches, 5 inches. And then we have this gap here that adds. So what is this gap? Now let's see, between 5 and 6, how many of these gaps do we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4. So each of them is a quarter. So what do we have? Our measurement is 5¼ inches. So 5¼ inches. So the precision of these inch rule is a quarter. So the minimum that we can measure is a quarter inch. Woohoo! Inch in short form is IN. If you see IN somewhere, you know that stands for inches. So we have 5¼ inches. All right. So that's our measurement. So the nearest, so here the question is, move the ruler to measure the length of the fish to the nearest quarter inch. Yeah. So the smallest distance we can have is a quarter inch. If anything is in between the quarter inch, we can't measure using this rule. We have to pick up a rule that can give us final precisions. All right, so that is it for this. Let's move on to the next. We have a centimeter one. We have a centimeter one. It says move the ruler to measure the length of the line to the nearest centimeter. Because the numbers that we have here are just a centimeter. We don't have numbers in between, so we can only get to the nearest centimeter. So that would be from 0. Again, don't align it. Don't make the mistake and align it at the edge of your ruler. Don't make this mistake. Start from the 0, right? From 0 here, we have 1 centimeter and 2 centimeter, that's all. So between the 2 ends of the line, we register a distance or the length of 2 centimeters. So we'll answer the question here. The line is about 2 centimeters long. Now let's go down and see this other line. We move our ruler, align the 0 here, and then we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the line is about 5 centimeters long. Right, one more example. Again, more lines. Ooh, why don't we have things like fish or spoons? So we measure here. Once your zero aligns here, you see what is the reading at the other end? 7 centimeters. So the line is about 7 centimeters long. Ooh, now we have a fig, a twig. Ooh, a twig from a fig tree. Okay, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 centimeters long. Ooh, so the line, the twig is, about the twig is just a little branch, okay? Twig, the little end of the branch. Now that's a sword. Now you have this sword, you have to be careful, the end of the sword to the tip of the sword. That's about 9 centimeters long. So you see, we can measure so many things around us using this nail. Ooh, from the end of the nail, so you have to really go up to the middle, because if you don't want to start around here, you have to go up to the middle, because the middle we have the end point here, and to the tip that you see measures exactly 6 centimeters. So we have some tips here on how we go about taking our measurements. Woohoo, pencil. Wow, you people love this. We use our pencils every day. So from this tip to the other tip, that's 8 centimeters long. So our pencil is 8 centimeters long. So we use length, and you have to choose what ruler you're using. Are you using a centimeter rule, or you are using an inch ruler to take the measurement? So from 0 here, the end of the rose flower, to the other end, put it a little down so that you can see that is about 16 centimeters. Oh, all right. And if we get to the inch here, and that was 5 1/4. So I will write 5 and then space 1 divided by 4. So that is 5 1/4 inches long, right? And then if we have this is a telescope. Ooh, we can use a telescope to see far, to see objects that are very, very far away. Okay, so at the end here, good. So we get here to about 11 1/4, since we have 4 spaces between 11 and that. So that's a quarter, that's 2 quarters, or a half, and that's 3 quarters, and that's 12. So 11 1/4 long. Woohoo, 11 1/4 what? A quarter centimeter, a quarter inches long. So there we go. We come to the end of our class today. So what have we learned? We've learned that to make sense of our environment, to learn the length, and to compare. Why do we do that? To compare, to say this one is longer. Longer by how much? Now one is 8 centimeters and the other one is 4 centimeters. So we can say the 8 centimeter spoon is twice as long as the 4 centimeter spoon. So we can compare things. If not, how do we make sense of our environment? Oh, my students, brings us to the end of our class. Wow, so that gets us ½ inch. Now imagine this distance from 8 to 9. This line is half at the middle. So when we get here is 1/2, and we get here is 2/2. We finish the half. So it's 8 inches and 1/2. So we'll write 8 space and then 1/2 like this. Okay, now we can do it more. I know you people want more, but we'll end here. Goodbye for today. Bye-bye. It's been your favorite teacher at Mureri Enterprises, Mr. Mo.